that people in Taiwan will realize that they cannot enjoy security or prosperity if they do not have an agreeable relationship with Chinese across the strait. I think it can. That depends in large measure on us, the United States, because we seem to be insisting on continued primacy in Pacific Asia rather than sharing the space, as I think we should, with China. China does not have active patrols off our coasts. It does not have bases near us, military bases. We are, on the other hand, we have such things vis-a-vis China. So I think there's an imbalance, and I think we need to correct that. I think the issue for the US government and our political system, that is a very simple one. In World War II, prior to World War II, we were not much involved in the world. We were isolationists. We were very late to join World War II. We did not join it until Japan attacked us at Pearl Harbor. In the course of World War II, we became the global hegemon, in effect. The Soviet Union should have most credit for defeating the Nazis. We defeated the Japanese in the Pacific. The Japanese Empire had overthrown the British, French, and Dutch empires and the American Empire in the Philippines in Pacific Asia. And when we overthrew the Japanese Empire, we created a vacuum and we filled it. And we imagine that there's still a vacuum, but there isn't. Japan is back as a great economic power, a global power. Vietnam has shown that it can defend itself against anyone. Countries like Thailand are independent, and Indonesia is rising. There is no vacuum, but we still want to exercise primacy. We have been accustomed to being in charge. It's hard to give up your status as the boss. So I think this is our problem, that we are not adjusting to two facts. One is we are not necessary anymore. There can be a constructive relationship, including some measure of a balance of power in Pacific Asia. We will participate in this, but we don't have to be on the front line. And second, we really should remember that our position in Asia is 79 years old. We should be willing to return to earlier days when we did not try to control events in the region. We participated, we took part, we played a role, but it was a more modest role. I think we don't understand correctly the position of China in the region before the arrival of the West and imperialism. People talk about the tribute system. I think this was actually state trade. It was mutual bribery, if you will, and China trying to ensure that nobody outside China thought about invading it. And so I think we imagine China in terms of European analogies that don't work. China is not Germany. It does not look for Lebensraum, for expanded space to settle. I don't think Chinese want more Koreans or Vietnamese or any other people on their territory. And China is within a natural geographic area bounded by seas, by mountains, by oceans, by deserts, in which Chinese culture is confined, essentially. So, and it has expanded slowly over millennia. It has absorbed people, and many people who now call themselves Han have other origins in the past. So I think we don't understand this very well. We think of Germany, we think of Japan, bursting out of its isolation. We think of France and Napoleon, and we think of the Russians and their expansion across Eurasia. I don't think China fits these patterns. So I would argue that we are hostile to a China that we imagine that does not actually exist. I was involved in the very earliest opening to China. The way Henry Kissinger conducted his discussions with Zhou Enlai, he began by asking, how do you see this issue? What do you think is happening? Will what happens if you do nothing, will what happens be to your advantage or against you? Is there a way that you could make it, if it is going to be against you, is there a way you could improve it and make it for you? Then he would explain how we see things, and he would ask, if we cannot cooperate directly, can we each separately, in parallel, take action to try to make things turn out better for both of us? So this began with a kind of philosophical or strategic review, intelligence review of the world situation. And it assumed that the other side had valuable views and capabilities that it could put to bear on the issue that would advantage us. We have not had that sort of dialogue for decades. People go to Beijing and they say, you are wrong about this, and you must do this and do that, and so forth. And, whether it's the Taiwan question or it's sanctions or technology battle, this is not a productive way to conduct a bilateral relationship between China and the United States. The Taiwan issue, which is an issue left over from history, from the Chinese Civil War, which did not conclude because the defeated Republic of China retreated to Taiwan, and the Korean War broke out and the United States intervened, and that grew into the current situation. Taiwan has evolved very differently from the mainland. It has a Japanese heritage. It has a Kuomintang heritage. So it's a very complex thing. I think Chinese are capable of sitting down with each other and bridging the gaps that this different history has created. And I think the United States bears some responsibility. I think the Trump administration is going to be a little more sophisticated about this than Mr. Biden was. I don't sense that Mr. Trump has any desire to go to war with China over Taiwan. Even Marco Rubio, who is the new Secretary of State in waiting, is ambivalent about this question. It may be the best thing that could happen is that everybody decides that a war is not a good idea. And the only predictable response of a war would be the destruction of Taiwan's prosperity. So I think, I hope we can find a way to set aside thoughts of war, and that people in Taiwan will realize that they cannot enjoy security or prosperity if they do not have an agreeable relationship with Chinese across the strait. I hope in this area too, Taipei and Beijing, who are the keys to this, not the United States, will find a way to resume dialogue and find a consensus.